yes, I have been wanting to visit Mount Eris.
Yeah, I don't want to be a cause for alarm here, but where did Twilight store that scroll? You know, when School Days premiered, I was really thrilled to see that not only was the MLP movie going to be canon to the show, but that there would be a Hippogriff character in Silverstream that would be joining the cast for the Friendship School. Fast forward to episode 6 of season 8, and I bet you can imagine how excited I was that we'd be getting to visit her home of Mount Eris again after the Hippogriffs had begun returning to and restoring it. Add to the fact that not only would it be an episode that would contribute to the world building of MLP, but also a Cutie Mark Crusader episode, and that they would be called by the map to solve a Hippogriff problem. Well, you've got yourself an interesting premise that has me hooked right off the bat, and I'm so glad that the writers are trying to showcase aftermaths of the movie with episodes like this. But how did the Crusaders and Twilight visiting the Hippogriffs turn out? Well, grab your swimsuits and your camera, we're off to see the Hippogriffs and the Sea Ponies. Okay, we saw it twice last season with two non-Element of Harmony characters in Starlight and Spike being called by the map, but once again we have more of the same characters being recruited for a friendship mission with the Crusaders. While I think it's awesome that Apple Bloom, Scootaloo, and Sweetie Belle can now take on friendship problems that don't pertain to Cutie Marks, it also makes me wonder just who would be the limit that the Cutie map will call. The map reaching out to Starlight made sense because her magic affected it with the time spell in Cutie Remark and when she and Twilight restarted the map in season 6. And because Spike has his own tiny throne next to Twilight's, that already meant he's connected to the map, so him being presented with missions isn't completely out of left field. However, summoning the Crusaders for a mission is interesting because the closest connections that they have to the map is that their sisters are element bearers, and even then Scootaloo was only taken under Rainbow's wing while still loving her as if Scoots was her little sister. But I can buy this premise of the trio being capable of map missions because of how closely bonded they are. They were brought together because of their strong desire to get Cutie Marks and work their flanks off for 5 seasons until it happened. And just like their big sisters, they received their marks at the exact same time, though their Cutie Marks are identical, save for one minor design. So, strong connections to the element bearers, a close bond that has been there for years, and receiving nearly identical Cutie Marks at the same time more than makes them worthy enough to take on Cutie map missions. Anyway, I love the world building for MLP that this episode gave us and how we got to see the Hippogriffs dealing with a post-Storm King world while they returned and were rebuilding their old home. Just seeing the Hippogriffs thriving on Mount Eris after how abandoned the place looked in the movie was such a sight to behold. The mountain not only looks gorgeous in flash animation, but I think the writers did a good job of how they presented the progression of the Hippogriffs once it was safe for them to leave the safety of the water. Re-establishing a connection to the outside world with a new train station illustrates that the populace of Mount Eris is willing and eager to get caught up on what they've missed while hiding from the Storm King, so we now have more opportunities to visit and learn about them. What I really appreciated about showing how the populace was readjusting is how realistic their choices were. I can see how some were eager to get back onto land after being isolated for so long, but I also like how some of the sea ponies loved it under the sea so much that they didn't want to leave. Either from feeling safer or the fact that some of them had to have been born in Sequestria, it was a very good move to show that not every single one was ready to ditch their underwater homes, which would have been really contrived in my eyes. At the very least, Sequestria is literally right next to Mount Eris, so if there are friends or family, as we'll get to in a minute, that made a different choice on where to stay, it won't be a long journey to see them, especially with those cool medallions that let them switch between Sea Pony and Hippogriff bodies on a whim. A huge bonus for me was the fact that there was no animosity shown between any characters that made separate decisions on whether to live as a Hippogriff or a Sea Pony. It makes sense that some would be disappointed with someone else's choice, but like I said, they can switch bodies in an instant and only travel a few hundred feet below the surface of the ocean or vice versa if they wish to visit someone. So having animosity between some of the Sea Ponies and Hippogriffs would have felt contrived as well. Speaking of certain families or friends choosing to move back to Mount Eris or stay in Sequestria, I found the conflict of the episode to be an interesting one that pertained to that idea. I found Terramar's conflicting situation really relatable and honestly shared a bit of his stress. It's extremely difficult putting yourself between one or two options and worrying about upsetting someone because of your decision. It's even worse when you stress yourself so much to the point that you become upset and frustrated because you're trying to make others happy that you begin to neglect your own happiness. And as an added stress factor, it doesn't help that the others around you made the same decision so easily, which only increases your frustration. Other than finding this very relatable, I think this problem that the Crusaders had to help Terramar solve was also a great one to introduce the Hippogriff and Sea Pony populations to the show without having to resort to a cliched animosity plot. However, something I also liked about the problem was I believe it could be a subtle metaphor for a child dealing with parents who've decided to separate and having trouble deciding who to live with, just made more kid-friendly, of course. Skybeak and Oceanflow clearly found their comforts on where to live, but they were perfectly fine with their significant other's decision. We saw how much Skybeak enjoyed being a hippogriff, and it seemed that Oceanflow simply loved the serenity of Sequestria, and neither wanted to give those up. At the same time, however, if this was supposed to be a metaphor about separated parents, I adore the fact that the writers had the two happy for one another and genuinely interested to see one another on the beach, sort of saying that couples who separate can still be very good friends and parents to their kids. Having them both be there to assure Terramar that they'll leave the decision up to him and support whatever it may be was genuinely heartwarming, especially since they apologized for unintentionally making him think he had to choose where to live. That final scene of Skybeak on the beach and Ocean Breeze in the tide with Terramar switching between a hippogriff and a sea pony body between them was a great way to symbolize that it's definitely possible to live in the best of both worlds. Both the hippogriffs and the sea ponies had something valuable to offer, and I like that Surf and/or Turf illustrated that you don't have to settle for just one, especially if it doesn't make you happy because you think you're disappointing someone else. I also think the episode did a fantastic job of showing us exactly what both Mount Eris and Sequestria had to offer in terms of being great places to live. It's another understandable layer of Terramar's dilemma along with believing he had to choose which parent to live with permanently. Instead of Terramar just telling us, we got to see that Mount Eris had plenty of open skies for the hippogriffs to spread their wings and satisfy the eagles within them. I'm also positive the views from atop the mountain were to die for, but they also had the advantage of being high up so they could spot potential invaders coming from far away. And of course, Mount Eris also had those gorgeous harmonizing heights where Sweetie Belle's love for music came into play with her adorable Sound of Music scene. I could easily see the hippogriffs using this tranquil place as an area to decompress and relax with the calming and peaceful sounds of the birds and the wind that combined together for those beautiful musical tones. And we also got another look at how pretty Sequestria was with the sea ponies. Plus, it was great to see Twilight and the CMC turning into sea ponies, more specifically because of how cute it was that Scootaloo enjoyed swimming around Sequestria so much. The place also had the added security of being underwater, so the sea ponies are fairly safe from invaders or power-hungry villains like the Storm King. Lastly, some sea ponies could have simply gotten so accustomed to living down there or were born down there that they simply were happy enough with remaining under the sea. Upon seeing the positives that both places had to offer Terramar, I could completely understand just how hard of a time he was having, and it worked better than him just telling the CMC the benefits of both Mount Eris and Sequestria. One issue I kind of have with the episode, however, is Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo's disagreement on what Terramar should do. Don't get me wrong, I think them failing to agree on how to help Terramar speaks volumes on how good the episode showcased his difficult situation. Unfortunately, the whole "Never Speak to Me Again" ending to their song just didn't sit right with me, and then you add on Apple Bloom playing Messenger, which only adds some pettiness to their predicament, even though I did chuckle at the fact that Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle were only sitting a foot apart. I think having them refusing to speak to one another dials back some of the seriousness of Terramar's problem since they waste time by putting their disagreement ahead of their mission. I believe taking out the "Never Speak to Me Again" part of the song and have it suddenly stop while they continue to bicker would have been far better. By doing this, instead of putting their own biases ahead of their mission like they do at the end of the song, they would at least show they still care about helping Terramar, not appearing, for a lack of a better word, selfish. Plus, their arguing would make a much better excuse for Terramar to get aggravated and leave, because it would intensify and kind of personify his own internal struggle. I get that the whole song was Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle describing the benefits of both options, but I just think the whole refusing to talk to one another angle is too childish for them. Thankfully though, it's just a minor nitpick since it doesn't last long, and the two do end up helping Terramar along with Twilight and Apple Bloom. Besides that little hiccup, the episode also had some good jokes to offer us within the story. For instance, I liked how the CMC poked fun at Twilight finding excuses to visit Mount Eris. Although I have to concede that her excuses were believable for why she's in the episode, unlike in Season 1 where she was crammed into some episodes for little reason. I briefly mentioned Sweetie Belle's Sound of Music scene earlier, but my favorite part about that was how she tapped into her inner Roadrunner and ditched Terramar as he was about to explain the harmonizing heist just so she could get closer to the music. As for Scootaloo, her boldness of just shouting,
"Attention, please! Any griff here have a problem?"
at the top of her lungs was hilarious. But what I truly liked about Scootaloo in this episode was how much she embraced being a sea pony. Seriously, it really made me smile at how she loved swimming around and even comparing it to flying, almost like a substitute to make up for her still undeveloped wings. It was more than just cute, it was rather sweet actually. Finally, while it was a cliche joke, I burst out laughing when Oceanflow out of nowhere offered to show Terramar's baby pictures to Twilight. I think it worked because it was a super quick gag and we didn't actually have to see him suffer through any humiliation. So yeah, all in all, I thoroughly enjoyed Surf and or Turf, minus that little teeny nitpick between Scoots and Sweetie Belle. I thought the episode hit all the right notes in terms of showing how the Hippogriffs and Sea Ponies were progressing post-movie. The conflict that Terramar faced was extremely relatable and the episode showed us that very well. There were just enough jokes to keep the episode lighthearted, and I believe the episode's story could work as a subtle metaphor about a kid dealing with parents who decided to separate, and if that's the case, I can appreciate that it showed separated parents can still be very good friends, which unfortunately is kind of rare to see on a TV show. Though, since that is just a thought, it won't affect my overall rating. Surf and or Turf is a frontrunner for one of my favorite Season 8 episodes and is well worthy of a green flag rating. But what did you think of Surf and or Turf? I'm MrLeftTurn, I'll see you when I get back from the track.